Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and yes team, I have been busy these last couple weeks. After the initial success of my Berry Rain of Fire strategy, I figured I would make one of these videos again since y'all seem to enjoy it when I made these for my first 25 and second 25 games of Ice PVP. I honestly would not expect a part 2 to this video. This is just something that I did for fun, and surprisingly still had a reasonable amount of fun doing. Unlike the ice videos. So how about that? These matches were never really all that long, which did contribute to the enjoyment. Even when I was losing, it didn't take too long, and it was easy to just go next and not get too tilted. I guess there were a couple exceptions, but ultimately, Fire, while being the worst school at Max right now, is still competitive, and I am glad that we've gotten to a point where even the off-meta schools can still eke out a win against most schools with the right strat. Now, I started this video off at 14.99 elo. Yeah, I was kind of in the trenches prior to this. It's a hard knock life on the worst school where you get countered to high heaven if you try to do literally anything, and I actually had a pretty decent win-loss ratio, surprisingly. So, let's go ahead and start on the games. So this was an explosive start. In game 1, I went against a Storm, and yeah, the Storm matchup, as y'all saw in yesterday's video, is an absolute nightmare, and this match was really no different. Storm can counter both ends of my combo, but oftentimes they don't even need to go that far, as they can set up a kill shot, usually before I'm able to send my game-winning Scion. In this case, it took me a painfully long time to find one of the 4 berries that I pack, but once I did, I sent my Rain and started on the damage. His first move after the Rain was to Stormzilla, which was a good move since it got rid of the 2 weaker cover OTs and gave him 2 strong blades to use. He didn't get a Storm Pip, so I thought I was safe, and I went for my Dark Surge like I usually do to get the pips I needed to send my Scion. What he did was very surprising and really caught me off guard. He sent a Bunyip's Rage, which for those unaware on the bottom path, does absolutely mass for 5 pips and turns up to 2 heals into a negative incoming healing aura. Now, this is a pretty good heal counter, and if Trident ever gets nerfed, I may start packing it despite the extra accuracy burden, but the main thing with Bunyip is its damage. This card nearly killed me when I had about 4.7k health left. That berry that I used saved my life in this match. And since I survived, it was wrapped up quite nicely from there, but I seriously was not expecting to nearly get killed, so well played by him. I ended up winning the match with 130 HP, which was 1.1% of my health, which meant that was just a very close victory. It was a tilt victory for me, and I gained 26 elo from it. In game 2, I went against a Myth, and in this game my deck worked a little bit better than last time, and as I described in yesterday's video, the Fire versus Myth matchup is one of those true toss-ups, but I think Myth is barely favored in it because they can blade a bunch, send a base gen and get super far ahead. That is what Jose was going for here, so I had to get my Rain off and make sure he couldn't just, nuke me with a quad buff base gen. And fortunately, Rain OTs last for 6 whole rounds, so rather than have to go for a surge and risk death, I was able to weakness him and force a Stone Colossus, which helped me out a ton. He got a Myth Pip, hoping for a Ninja Pigs for a kill shot, but when I saw that he couldn't hit me with a Drop Bear, I simply shielded and kept stacking up my pips until I could Scion. When he got that Fire Pip the next round, I weaknessed, and by this point, he either had to kill me or get treed and lose, and there was no way he was killing me with 2 kinds of debuffs up. So for this one, I won with 3,076 HP, and I won with 27.1% of my health left, a likely victory for me, and I gained 29 elo for it. In game 3, I went against a Death, and in this one, I just decided to play Regfire and go for a Krampus into Ifrit play. And Death is a tricky one sometimes. If they can keep those minus 60 Chrome weaknesses on you, it is much harder to win, but you can still perform well if you play it right. I played for an Ifrit without a 60 on, because in this matchup, if you can nail your Death opponent with one of those, it is a win condition, and from there, I kind of just wrapped it up pretty quick. So, for this one, I won with 4,080 HP, which was about 36% of my health left, a safe victory, and I gained 20 elo for it. In game 4, I went against a Storm Wizard, and This is just one of those tragic games that you wish you didn't have to see. The developers seemingly turned my crit off in this game, and it cost me dearly. I was able to get my combo off, and I was poised to do an absolutely massive amount of damage, but then I did not crit my Rain of Fire, and it was sorta just over from there. Rain is my main source of damage in this matchup. It is meant to do about half of the target's health in this matchup, with Scion doing the other half, but when I didn't crit and then she Zilla'd, it was just sort of sealed. Kinda just ripped from there. I think that if I had been able to crit the Rain, I could have gotten away with not critting the Scion, which I of course didn't, but yeah, I kinda just sealed the deal. Losing almost double the elo that my opponent gained with this kind of a rank difference is pretty sad to look at, though. So for this one, I lost when Karai had 1082 HP, so about 10.9% of her health, a likely category victory for her, and I lost 15 elo for it. In Game 5, I went against another Storm, my third Storm in the video, and for this one, it went similarly to Game 3, except this time I didn't pull my Rain. And I had to go for a Krampus into Ifrit play against a Storm, which is usually suicide, but this time it worked out as my opponent did not have the Zilla in hand, and that allowed me to get the combo off, and the overtimes are actually just doing that much, so I didn't really have to do much more, and I got the dub pretty easily, though I can definitely attribute that to my opponent not having the Stormzilla on the round that I sent my Krampus. If she did, that would have been a big problem for me, but so I'm just glad she didn't. For this one, I won with 4,820 HP, 42.5% of my health, a safe victory, and I gained 26 elo for it. In game number 6, I went against a Myth, and so for those of you who watched Wednesday's video where I was on my life, this guy here might look a little familiar, and yep, if you watched that video and you recognized him, you can guess what he was doing here. Myth is fortunately one of those schools that Barrier Rain works quite well against, and I was able to perform the combo quite easily. Sure enough, he sent his base gen and did 7.3k with 3 buffs, because Wiz, and I'd actually messed up a bit when I didn't have the Shadow Pip needed to surge and threaten to buff Scion or Ifrit, but by that point it did not matter at all. He sent a Stone Colossus, but I was able to send an Ifrit pretty quickly and closed out the match. I actually could have sent the Scion there, but I wanted to Ifrit for style points, just to see that full complete ring of overtimes cooking him to death slowly. Took all 8 ticks on to finish him off on that last round, but finish him off they certainly did, and it was a very satisfying victory for me. I won this match with 935 HP, 8.2% of my health left, which puts this in the lean category for me, and I gained a whopping 30 elo for it. Game 7 was a mirror matchup. I went against another Fire, and I'll say this, Tyler is definitely far more experienced than I am in this game, but even then, I should have understood that hitting first was a win condition in a mirror like this. I brought it down to within 1 turn, but since he had hit first, I was not winning that, and there's really not much else to it than that. I definitely could have played better, and if I'd hit first, the game was most likely mine to win despite the experience difference between us. I could have gotten the Barry Rain combo off and gotten the Surge into Tree combo going quicker, and won like that, but just didn't quite go that way. So, is what it is. And I lost when Tyler had 6,697 HP. The result was he won with 59.1% of his health, a safe victory for him, and I lost 6 elo for it. In Game 8, I went against Balance, and, well, I really couldn't tell you what happened here. Balance is supposed to absolutely nuke my strategy, being able to incessantly spam mana burn until they can pull the Triton they need to counter my berry, but I guess this guy was just farming tickets? Maybe? I don't know if you can even do that anymore. I think I saw something in some update notes once saying you couldn't, but I'll take it. I won with full health, 100% of my health left, obviously, and that was a one-sided victory for me, and I gained 12 elo for it. In Game 9, I went against another Fire in a mirror matchup, and back on the topic of tragic games, I had a similar issue here with how I was hitting second in a mirror. But the game really and truly just screwed me royally in this one. For the life of me, I could not pull a berry forever, and I had to get rid of multiple Ifrits in order to find one. And this was a true mirror. I was going against someone doing the exact same strat as me, so it was really important that I had at least comparable deck RNG in order to win the match. Of course, I was not that lucky. He played decently well, but if I'd pulled a Scion rather than an Ifrit to use with my overtimes, I would have won. And not by the most comfortable of margins. I was hitting second after all, but if my hit had been a Scion instead of an Ifrit, I would have done all the damage I needed to do right up front and gotten the win. So, for this one, I lost it when the guy had 2,843 HP. The result was he won by 25.3 percentage points, a likely victory for him, and I lost 13 elo for it. In game 10, I went against yet another Storm, and there's kind of just not much to really say here. It was a Storm Wizard, and I just got out-damaged. That does bring up another problem that I face as a Fire Wizard in this matchup doing this strat. Sometimes they didn't even need to counter me, they just needed to kill me before I could kill them, despite running a strat that could kill them in about, 8 to 10 turns. This guy did exactly that. I can't hate. The matchup is just genuinely that stacked against you if you're playing as a Fire. So for this one, I lost when the guy had 5,939 HP. The result was he won with 60.6 percentage points of his health left, which is about on par with where I put the matchup in my tier list. I said it was Storm plus 60, and he won by 60. So about average right there. Safe victory for him, and I lost 12 elo for it. In game number 11, I went against another Fire. So anyway, on to our third immensely tragic game of the video, and we're not even halfway done. This was the game where it took me 3 cycles of aggressively digging for one of my 4 Rain of Fire TCs out of my 36 cards in my side deck in order to actually pull the card and send it. Because it took me that extra turn to pull, I was down a buff when I set my Scion, and after the OT damage, the guy tanked on 23 HP. Just extremely bad luck, and this is probably the closest match I've ever recorded. So for this one, I lost when the guy had, as I said, 23 HP. It's actually that close. And he won with 0.2% of his health left. A tilt victory for him, but I lost 19 elo for it. In game number 12, I went against another Fire. Wow, guys, a mirror match that actually went my way and didn't involve any horrific deck RNG or people tanking with 2-digit HP. I guess the guy did tank my hit on 30, but I was able to detonate in overtime with Krampus for style points and got the win pretty cleanly. Really not much else to it than that, just a basic run-of-the-mill mirror match where I got my Berry Rain combo off. In game 13, I went against a Death, and similar to the earlier Death game, I focused mainly on getting big damage off with things like Scion, utilizing my OTs that I got from Rain to do a lot of damage. I was fortunate enough to have gotten off an unmitigated Rain of Fire against this guy, which was very, very helpful, and I got every single tick out of it, which I ended up needing to win. That's really kind of about it, though. I did what Fires do, and I leveraged overtimes to the best of my ability, and won as a result. If he'd kept up the minus 60 spam, I definitely could have been looking at a much tougher game, but there will be more on that later. For this one, I won with 4,083 HP, which meant I won with 36% of my health, and that is a safe victory for me, and I gained 16 elo for it. In game 14, I went against another Fire, and with how many insanely tragic games we've seen so far, this one was finally tragic for someone other than me, and my opponent knew what was up. She was prepared, she was able to pull the Triton, she was ready to counter my berry and set me back significantly. Everything was coming up Pixie Crown as she went to cast her spell, but then she fizzled. Base fizzling a Triton on a pivotal round is a death sentence, and judging by the margin that I won this match by, that rings true once again. Genuinely, she was one of the only people in this entire saga that was ready to counter me and put me in a bad spot, but the game delivered this match right into my hands as an act of providence. Can't complain, especially after how much the game has hoed me over the course of these games. So for this one, I won with 9,825 HP, with 86.6% of my health left. That is a one-sided victory for me, and I gained 12 elo for it. Game 15. I went against a life wizard in this one, and this was by far the most tragic game in this video. The most tragic game in the video was that of the 15th. If there is one thing about the life school, it's that it is the best at countering more overtimes. Spells like Spinosaur and King Artorias are bound to ruin you if you're running Barry Rain, and this person certainly came prepared. But not that prepared. Something to note, I was in the process of absolutely tearing through her, and I was well on my way to winning the match. She did take an Earthwalker for the two weaker OTs from the Rain, and she did sit under brace for a good portion of the match, and overall, she was just very tanky and had a lot of health that I had to reduce. You will see, I sent my Berry Rain, then surged into an Ifrit, then built up into a Scion, and then got into position to surge into another Scion, which would have been the kill shot even if she went for a Rebirth. Life Wizards sure have a lot of health, and it is much harder to defeat them if they're sitting under their Pierce Sponge Ore for 16 rounds. It was the round where I was about to surge into the second Scion when the problems arose. My Rain OTs were out, and my Ifrit OTs only had barely enough time for me to surge into a Scion. That would have been enough, but then on that fateful round, she went for a King Artorias. For those unaware, Life's King Art does some decent damage, but its main function is to turn up to 3 damage overtimes into up to 3 heal overtimes, each healing for an immense amount at this point in the game. This did two things at once that set me back tremendously. She was healing for about 3,500 health over the next 4 rounds, taking her out of kill range if I didn't have a Scion, and because she removed the 3 Ifrit OTs that I still had with that move, I did not have said Scion Gambit anymore. From there, it was all downhill. I tried going for a Krampus Furnace Ifrit combo, but was immediately met with a surge into Earthwalker, so that was out. By this point, I just sent an Ifrit for damage with 1 buff, and it did some okay damage, and to follow it up, I had a Surge and another Ifrit in hand, and could win the match, but I was extremely low on health. So was she, but she had pips where I would have had to use a turn surging to gain in that department, and that's how this tragic game finally ended after almost 18 minutes. Getting countered at every turn is why Fire is at the bottom right now, and it's matches like these that influenced my ranking yesterday. This was also the reason why I moved the Life v Fire matchup from the likely category into the safe category. There's no strategy that Fire can run which beats Life at the moment, and this match proved that even if the Life deck fails or plays poorly for most of the match, it just takes interrupting the combo one time to ruin the Fire and win the game, stealing it out from under the Fire's feet. So the results for this one were I lost when she had 1263 HP. The result was she won with 8.6% of her health left, and that was a lean victory for her, and I lost 13 elo for this extremely tragic set of events. Moving on to game 16, I went against a Storm, and when I saw I'd queued a Storm, my brain immediately went into Doomer mode, but as I played through the match, I gained some hope that I could win. And around the middle of the game, he committed the cardinal sin of being a Storm while going against a strat that utilized heals, going below 6 pips. That was the turn that I sent my Berry Surprise, knowing he could not Triton it off, and from there the game was sealed. He was still a Storm, so I had to be on my guard in order to not die to some giant hit he might have had up his sleeve, but once I got the triple buffed Rain of Fire off, the game was over. He took a good Thermic Golem to weaken the Rain, and I think it was his best move, but ultimately he was staring down way too much damage at this point, and I was easily able to surge into a Scion for the victory. I won with 2,985 HP, a margin of 26.3% of my health, likely victory for me, and I gained 12 elo for it. For game 17, I went against another Storm, and with this game, I knew who this was. He's someone that was in my guild for a bit before I took a break from that guild, still in, the new guild and all that, but when I knew him, he was notorious for throwing raids, but evidently he got his act together and got his setup made. Now, it does not come as a surprise that some people might know about the strat that I run on my Fire, seeing as I've uploaded it publicly to YouTube twice before, but when I look back at our guild's Discord server, I saw him and a good few others in a VC, so my fate was kinda just sealed, and not because it was a matchup that favored his school by 60 points. Just like in Game 10, there was nothing I could really do. It was the third worst matchup in the entire game, and there was no way this guy of all people was going to go about playing the game without keeping his pips at a minimum of 6 and a Triton in his hand at all times. That's just how it is. We go next. So, for this one, he won when he had 3986 HP. Result was he won with 39.7% of his health. Safe victory for him, as it really should be. He's a storm on a fire, and I lost 7 elo for it. Now in game 18, I went against another life wizard, and I tell you what, if it's one thing that's a dead giveaway, you're a weirdo and a low lifer in this game, it's keeping your rank pitifully low, setting your deck for one specific school and one specific strat, and then waiting around for people running that school and that strat to finish their matches so you can Q-snipe them to drain their elo and sit there and play counter for 15 minutes while thinking yourself to be good. If you're in my Discord, you know who Bonafide Hustler is, and lately he's been doing the same strat as me on his own time. And right before I got this guy, Hustler was telling me about how he saw this guy spectating one of his matches. He then proceeded to get this guy, who sat there, braced a bunch, and never let his pips go below 10 so he could spiny soar any rain plays the Hustler tried to make, which he then did to me. If he was low on health, he would use King Art instead. If the mood struck him, he would use Jin's Restoration of all cards to counter one of my berry heals and turn it into a heal on himself just because he felt like it. Eventually, instead of using one of his myriad counter cards to deal damage to me, he bladed a bunch and used an unbuffed Primal Oni Gambit to finish me off by 300 HP because whiz. I find it a little sad that the Q is so dead to where 1400s can reliably Q-snipe people 200 plus elo above them, but hey, it's Ratbeard's world. We're just living in it. So for this one, I lost when the dude had 10,198 HP. The result was he won with 66% of his health. A safe victory for him, which, if he had won by anything less, it would have been very embarrassing given that he, set and sniped me as well as Hustler. So, sniping 2 people in the same night, right? Go crazy. And I lost 24 elo for it. Moving on to game 19, I went against a Balance, and in this game, I went against fellow content creator Potato Monkey, who I've actually given a shout out to before. And he's a chill guy, really innovative, and once the burn ban comes around, I might look to him for any new strategies that I want to try to run on my Balance. That said, he does know what I do on my fire, and I was looking at an uphill battle, especially given that he was a Balance. I was beyond fortunate that, when he went for the pips he needed to send a Rainbow Serpent my way the second I buried, he pip-failed the Storm Pip that he needed, and then didn't P-serve it the following round. For those unaware, Rainbow Serpent's B-Path will put up to 2 60% chromatic weaknesses on the target, and up to 2 60% chromatic blades on the caster, depending on how many heals the target has. Needless to say, this would severely affect my ability to do my combo. And my luck in this game is about as polarized as you can imagine. People tanking on 23 HP due to deck failing, queuing people who play horribly but still win off of using one card, not pulling the right hit to use when I could win a match where I'm at a major disadvantage. But then I've now also had games where people flee, where people have base fizzled a Triton and not gotten the pip necessary to grind my strat to a halt for 2 rounds in a row. Upon seeing that, he fled, which was completely understandable because he knew what came next, and the game had decided for him that it was absolutely going to happen if he didn't flee. Wiz is just like that, I guess. And I did find it funny that both of the balance games that I had in this video, neither of them are real games, so that was refreshing, if anything. Really don't like going against this school in its current state, but hey. So the results were, I won with 10,953 HP, and 96.5% of my health, which is a one-sided victory, and I picked up 24 elo for it, which was a pretty sizable gain. Happy about that. In game 20, I went against another Fire, and this was the most intense match of the video without a doubt. These mirror matchups get serious, and this guy was honestly playing pretty well given the circumstances. When I went for my combo, he sent 2 Zillas, the second of which was not a great Zilla at all, but it did stop me from nuking him where he stood with a Scion. From there, I had to pivot to Krampus Ifrit, and I did not initially pull said Ifrit, so I had to dispel him to buy myself some time. But, of course, with the dispel on, out came the third Zilla, which put me in kill range to a S'more machine. I sent the Ifrit anyway to bring him closer to death, hoping to surge and win a trade, but did not pull the surge and had to go for one of my 85 cents. That forced him to King Art, which was his best move, but it was not going to kill me, and I sent back an Art of my own, which did kill him, as my prior Ifrit had put him in kill range. This was overall a super intense game, and it had me on the edge of my seat the whole way through. Well played to Trevor, made for the best match in the video, and I'll link the upload down below if you want to watch it in full. The results for this: I won with 1,140 HP, with 10.0% of my health, barely getting over into the likely category, and I gained 20 elo for it. In game 21, I went against the last fire of the video, I think. Yeah, I just had to check my sheet again because I had like 5 mirror matches in this video, but yeah, there's not really much to it here. I did my combo, handled things pretty well, that sort of thing. This guy did do something interesting though. He went for a power link, which did honestly do quite a bit of damage. It did about 1,500, and then he buried the turn after, which set up an Oni that he did end up taking. Now, I like this idea a lot, as Oni costs fewer pips than Rain, and getting the Gambit set up gives you a lot of burst damage, as y'all can definitely see here, but the setup ultimately costs more and wastes any blades you might have on the link. And I honestly think that Bury Rain is the best way to leverage heals as a fire, because there's just so much more you can do with dots compared to hots, and a card like Rain that gives dots for hots is the best way to really expand on that. I like this guy's strat, but I don't quite think it's something that's all that viable, as you can't really deal someone's entire health bar in a couple moves with it. I guess there's a conversation to be had about Berry, Oni, Surge, Oni, and that could do it, but that's a 5-round combo, while the one I do is only 4, allowing me to utilize Furnace far better. Maybe if you manage to keep Bubble, but I don't know. The results for this one were, I won with 2,307 HP when the guy fled, and that meant I won with 20.3% of my health. Likely victory for me, and I picked up 22 elo for it. In game 22, I went against a Storm, and guess what, guys? It's the return of Karai from game 4. She is indeed back, and after her near loss back in game 4, she was not about to let that happen again and run the risk of me actually critting anything this time. In this match, she brought with her some new tech, and some rather foolproof tech at that. I, of course, am talking about none other than the brilliant creation known as the TI-84 Inspired Calculator, made and manufactured in my home state of Texas. People from elementary school age to senior engineers rely on this cutting-edge piece of technology, as it is truly remarkable and reliable, giving perfect calculations as calculators do, with just a few presses of the right buttons. It's simple and easy to use, with an interface that literally anyone could understand how to operate, which explains how one made it into the hands of Karai of the Dauntless Troop Guild in Wizard101. You can probably see where I'm going with this, but after hitting me with the Catalan about midway through the match, I was officially within kill range of a Storm Owl with 1 blade and 1 bubble. But Karai didn't quite know that yet, so she had to double check and make sure she could close out the match without running the risk of me actually being able to play the game. After spending 16 seconds running the calculation, she determined that, yes indeed, a Storm Owl with a 35 blade and a 25 bubble would kill me by just 17 damage points, closing out the match in under 4 minutes, as Storms tend to do in this matchup, where they theoretically should never lose if they don't deck fail. I promise this segment was not an ad for Texas Instruments, but I sure wish they'd pay me for having to go through that match. The results here were, I lost when she had 8,741 HP. The result was she won with 87% of her health. One-sided victory for the Storm, and I lost 11 elo for it. In game number 23, I went against the Storm, and well team, I tell you what, this had to have been one of the most mental games of the video. I gained 2 elo for this match against a 1200 ranked Damon on a school that cuts mine to ribbons, and he wasn't even playing all that bad. I'm not sure how he got here, but he genuinely was making some moves that put pressure on me and slowed down my combos. He sent a King Art to counter my berry heals, he sent multiple base thermic golems to stall me out, he put me in a position where I was pretty sure I would lose a trade and die if I didn't shield, and Overall, this guy was an absolute enigma by all means, and when I saw the dude had 1200 rank and I only gained 2 for that 13-minute experience, I was genuinely dumbfounded. Not gonna complain about a win, of course, but for it to be that close against a guy who may as well have been selecting cards at random and having it work because the school diff is really just that crazy is a little whack. I'm just glad I didn't end up losing 30 plus ELO for this. So for this one, I won with 3,517 HP, 31% of my health, barely getting into the safe category, and I gained 2 ELO, as I mentioned, for that whole experience, the Hiram Nighthaven experience team. So in game 24, I went against a Storm, and this is really just an extremely clean game. I don't really have much else to say on it. I killed him before he could kill me, and that's all there really was to it. I sent a grand total of 2 hits this game, not counting the berry. I sent my Rain, which did absolutely mass, and I sent my Scion, which also did absolutely mass, despite the Catalan weakness being on me. Overtime gambits really and truly do so much damage, and it's no wonder that I relied heavily on my Scions throughout this video. And as great as Ifrit is, and ultimately it does do more damage than Scion if you factor in all 6 rounds of the 3 overtimes, but Scion is just that guy, and it's not hard to tell why it's so good, especially in the matchups against more squishy schools, which we tend to see more of, especially in this video. This was the last Storm I faced in this set of games, and I faced 8 Storm Wizards in 9 of these 25 games, just to put that in perspective. Scion is truly the bread and butter against that school, and if you're able to get your combo off without getting just, straight up killed, Scion is your best friend and will win you matches just off of the sheer amount of damage that it does. So for this one, I went with 6,990 HP, I went with 61.6% of my health, which was a very safe victory for me, and I gained 12 ELO for it. And here we are in the final game against a Death Wizard, and so I just talked a bunch about how great Scion is, and yeah, it's pretty great, but in these matchups against schools like Death, you occasionally need to lean more into Ifrit to maximize your damage. Out of the 3 deaths I went against in this video, this guy played the best, and he showed why I still think the matchup favors Death rather heavily if they play it right. He sent 3 poisons toward the end, and they honestly and truly did the bulk of the damage here, and the reason why this was as close as it was because he did actually keep a 60 on me for when I sent my Rain of Fire. That card, as I've said before throughout this video, is one of my main sources of damage, as it's meant to overwhelm the target, but when it's doing maybe, 3,000 damage across 5 overtimes through a 60 weakness, it's going to be much harder to eke out the win, especially when you add a factor like Brace in on top of that. I was lucky enough to get an unmitigated but also unbuffed Ifrit off while he was spamming double buff poisons, which allowed me to stack up my pips and get a Hail Mary Scion off under a Furnace. That Ifrit made the difference. The damage from the overtimes added up quick, and with the rain running out, they provided a buffer that was sorely needed. I was able to come back and win the match from such a wild health deficit, and I owe it all to the Ifrit that allowed me to keep up the pressure. This match was very close, and I definitely could have died given that I was taking about 6,000 damage from 3 poisons, and was certainly within kill range of a vampire at the end, when the last tick of the 3rd poison was factored in, so I was very lucky that I was able to get off 2 unmitigated hits in this match. Death is still strong and can absolutely beat Fire, but if you play your cards right, you can definitely win. So for this one, I won with 1,491 HP, which is 13.1% of my health, a likely victory for me, and I gained 14 ELO for it. Over the course of this video, I learned that even though Fire is the worst school, it is absolutely still competitive, and I'm happy about that. I do think that you could still have fun on a Fire, and yeah, I mean, you just need the right strategy. So again, this is the deck that I used for most of this. I originally had 6 Ifrits and 4 Scions, but as I faced more Storms and more Fires, I was like, you know what, I need to do more damage up front, so that's what I went with. So Scion, that was my main hit throughout. And then, I could obviously still pivot if I needed to, like I could go for a Krampus Ifrit play, which I did in some of these. I can go for a King Art, which really saved me in game number 20. I still had Shads, which I didn't use any of these, but they were still there if I needed them. And then I had some Golems, which could have helped me, I guess, if I needed them against the Storm. And yeah, just overall, I mean, that was what was up. The only things that are missing from this side deck are 2 Furnaces. I run 5, so there's that. That is the deck if you want to use it. And this is a very strong strategy, but again, you know, there's a lot of things that can get in your way. And yeah, that was very easy to tell from all this. I did end up going 16-9, which is honestly kind of a decent win-loss ratio. It's pretty decent, you know. And I went from 1499 elo all the way up to 1666. So pretty good gains from there. So Fire is definitely competitive, and I don't know if I would recommend playing it, but it is definitely playable, and I think that's good. And who knows how Fire is going to fare once things like Mana Burn and Supernova are banned. We could see Fire doing very well against balance with this strat. I think Fire is going to be one of the schools that does do well against balance once that's done, so there's big things in store for the Fire school. I think that it is going to go up instead of down. I mean, it can't go down. It's at the bottom of the barrel, but I think Fire is definitely, it can come back, and, you know, Fire is like, you can't take it lightly, and it's like beating the counters is kind of what this Bury Rain of Fire strat is all about. You can still get countered by Triton, but, you know, if they don't have the Triton, the moment you bury, it's like you give them 1 round to Triton, and if they don't, then it's a win condition. Because it's like they can Zilla 2 of your weaker OTs off from the rain, but by that point, you know, you've already surged into like a tree or an Ifrit, and you can just overwhelm them. So that's part of the fun with Fire. It is definitely beatable. I mean, I lost 9 games because of it, and it's not real fun in the Storm matchup, but overall, I did have fun doing these 25 games. I don't know if I'll do 50 games. We will just have to see. I might try and do 25 games on another school, but we will figure that out. So for the time being, thank y'all for watching. I've been Ice Cold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more, and I will see y'all later.